Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. Spoiler alert, but I always start the show with a 30-second bio and then talk a little bit about how the guest got into musical theater. And if they had not gone into theater, then what else would they have wanted to do? Well, today's guest loves musical theater, but took a different career path, then came back around to the arts. And now she is the host of the podcast Creatively Performing Arts, where she helps people to start to sing, dance, and act again. Let's find out how her journey took her back to her love of musical theater. And welcome to the show, Estelle Avbuere. Estelle, hello.
Hey. Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I really am so excited to be here and to talk with you. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Well, as you know, I spoiled the beginning part, and I am going to ask for your 30-second bio. So, who is Estelle in 30 seconds?
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Estelle. I am a daughter of Nigerian immigrants. I am a lover of people. I love God. I have a relationship with God, and that's really central to who I am. And I'm also a singer and kind of new to the performing arts industry, like professionally. Um, but I grew up singing and acting and performing. I'm a lover of musical theater, of course. And overall, I'm a creative. I love to create and help people to start creating more and to start using their creative gifts. And that's why I host the podcast Creatively Performing Arts. And that's why I started my online voice studio, also named Creatively Performing Arts, to really help people start exploring and using their creative gifts.
Perfect. And were you always in a musical theater growing up, or is that something you discovered a little bit later?
Um, yes and no. So musical theater, as we see musical theater, that kind of came a little bit later. Like my love for that came more so in high school. I mean, and I say like later compared to like some people who, see a Sound of Music when they're 5 and are like, I want to be, I want to be Maria,
Yeah.
and they're just like, that's who I want to be. No, for me, I grew up, I was a Disney Channel girl, so I loved Disney Channel. Um, I don't know if this is weird, but like I feel like my love for musicals kind of like first started with Disney Channel
Yeah.
because of like High School Musical and like the Cheetah Girls, just like seeing these people on screen who were like just like bursting into song and dance in the middle of their lives. That to me was like, that's so cool. And my sisters, I have an older sister and a younger sister. And they also loved it. So we would all three like we put on performances at home and stuff like that. We, especially me and my older sister, because we're closer in age, and my younger sister is like several years younger than us both, so she was maybe a little bit too young
Yeah.
in those early years. But we would like put on shows and everything. So I love performing. I love the performing arts from a young age. My mom put us in dance classes when we were like 3 and 4, like like those baby classes. I started singing in church choir when I was like 8, and then school choir, and started acting in like church plays, Christmas plays and stuff, and of course like middle school and high school plays. So that's where like my love for performing developed, was like through just local dance classes, um, acting in church and school, and singing in church and school. But when it came to musical theater, I my first experience with musical theater performing was in 5th grade when I performed in A Year with Frog and Toad, I remember. And it was like my first year, it was my only year at this specific school, and I performed in their musical, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I had performances before, like on like stages and stuff, through dance. We would have like dance recitals in theaters. But for some reason, like acting and like performing in that show, even though I wasn't even like a leader or anything, I was in the ensemble, and it was so much fun getting to do different things in the ensemble. And I just remembered that being like, oh, this is really great, like a great moment. Still wouldn't say I loved musical theater. To me, it just felt like another way to perform. But I'm getting to it. But and then like in middle school in choir, my choir teacher, she's awesome. She was awesome. She is still my younger sister's choir teacher because we went to the same high school and middle school, and like she's great. But she would always play like, Sound of Music. She played um My Fair Lady, I watched My Fair Lady. I fell in love with Audrey Hepburn. Like I loved it. And then I also like we had family friends that we would always watch Dreamgirls together, the Jennifer Hudson and Beyonce and yeah, that version, that Dreamgirls the movie together, and we were obsessed with it. And so like again, loved it. Wouldn't say that I loved like Broadway and musical theater. I just was like, I love performing. I
Mhm.
love seeing people perform and sing. It wasn't really until high school when my older sister, um, she was in our honors choir, and she was, I guess I was in eighth grade at this point, about to go into high school. And she and her honors choir, they're about to go to New York to sing in Carnegie Hall. There was like a program where they would invite high school students to sing. And I got to do it a little bit later. But that year they were also going to see a show on Broadway. They were going to see Wicked. And so for somehow my older sister, her name's Edwina, she got like the CD of, it was like a, I guess it wasn't like the actual Wicked CD, maybe it was like a burned copy or something, but of like a bunch of songs from Wicked, and she would play them over and over in the car. She had like just started driving, and we would drive to school and she'd play them over and over again. And I was like, oh, what are we listening to? Like, what is going on? I was just like eighth or ninth grade at this point. I was like, okay, whatever. Like I have no choice but to listen to it. But I just like fell in love with, first, I guess it was because I was hearing the songs and hearing the soundtrack. I wasn't seeing it, but this was like the first time really like listening to an entire Broadway soundtrack, like listening to all the songs and having to envision the story, even though like without actually seeing it. And like that's how I got to know Alphaba and Glinda. And I was like, oh, like this is what's going on. And like she would explain some of the story to me. I saw Wicked on Broadway when I went to New York to sing with my choir in Carnegie Hall a couple years later. And by then the spark was lit. Like I already, because of that, her playing those songs over and over again, and me like kind of seeing the story, I was like, wow, this is so cool how you can story tell through music in this way. And like I could understand the story just by like listening to the songs. And I was like, this is so cool. It just opened my eyes to musical theater in a way that, there was a lot leading up to it, but it was really when that from that point on, and I was like, yeah, I love this so much. And then seeing it on Broadway, I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So, yeah, long story, but yes, it kind of came a little bit later where it really hit me that I love Broadway. I love musical theater. Yeah.
Yeah. There's certain shows that are entry points for musical theater. Like depending
Mhm.
on how old you are in your years, it can be Hamilton, it can be Wicked, Rent, Phantom. Like you can go back and see there's set points in musical theater
Yeah.
canon, and yes, Wicked is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So you, like I said at the beginning, you kind of went off from the musical theater world. So
Yeah.
you're in high school, you have to decide what you want to do. What did
Hmm.
you do?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, amazing parents, hardworking, so determined, and truly, always instilled in us like a mindset of like positive thinking and encouraging us to, um, explore our gifts and our talents. But at the same time, it's a different culture when you think of like a career and a profession and what a profession really looks like. And of course, the musical theater industry, the performing arts industry is not, and just the arts in general, like creative industries aren't always seen as like stable. Well, they definitely aren't seen as stable or secure or really viable options, especially in West African culture. And so I'd always had that kind of mindset without even realizing it, that I would never have considered it as a career path for me. Like it didn't even cross my mind. I always loved being creative, even when I wasn't like creating shows with my sisters, I was like crafting, I was like learning to sew and doing DIY projects and stuff when I was younger. I love fashion. I actually was like, if I was going to have a career in a creative field, it was going to be in fashion. I was like, I could just work in like fashion merchandising. That feels kind of stable, but also secure, but also creative to me. So, and I loved fashion. I was like, for me at that point, even though I loved musical theater, that spark had been lit. I did not consider it at all for a career path in any way. Like it didn't even cross my mind. I just knew that I loved it. and I wanted to continue to grow vocally because, again, throughout this whole time I was singing and acting in plays and stuff. And I knew that I wanted to continue to grow those talents because, like I said, my parents always said, like, keep growing your talents, but also have your career. So to me, I was like, well, I want to work in fashion if I'm going to choose a job. But again, that was a little bit too out of the box for the way that I was raised, and it was a little too
Mhm.
creative. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And in high school, my high school, we had to write like a thesis paper in order to graduate, where we really study a topic for throughout our entire senior year, and we prepare for it in our junior year of high school too. So in that time, I started really kind of grappling with my race identity as a Black woman, daughter of Nigerian immigrants, who was born here but has that Nigerian background, and also went to a predominantly white high school. So I started really delving into sociology, social sciences, started delving into psychology, wrote a research paper. My thesis was related to being being first and second generation immigrants in high school, and like how that just like developing your race identity and like the social science behind that. That was kind of what the topic was. And so that drew me into psychology, it drew me into social sciences. I was like, this is kind of interesting. So it was like there was a lot going on. But I was like, I do like psychology. I do like understanding people. I do like mental health. I was starting to really see that that was something that was interesting to me. And I think that's something that a lot of people in theater really can relate to, and really can find a way to love, because theater is so ideally is so centered on empathy and really understanding people and relating to people. And so that to me is why psychology appealed to me. So I decided to major in psychology. And again, wanting to sort of go the route that was kind of expected of me. I was also pre-med. I was like, well, um, my parents work in healthcare. My father is a physician, my mom is a health administrator. So I was kind of expected to go into the healthcare field. My older sister chose law, and she's a lawyer now and she loves it. And it was like, okay, well, like you should do something in healthcare. And I was like, well, I like psychology. I'll be pre-med and I'll minor in music. And that's what I did.
Mhm.
I minored in music for a couple of years in college, graduated a semester early because I was just done with school at that point. All the pre-med classes I was done. So I didn't actually finish the voice minor, but I did have the opportunity to study voice with two awesome voice teachers who I loved, and really explore my voice more. I was also singing in like a worship team throughout college. So like I was singing and I was performing and I was developing that gift. But my major was not in theater, was not in anything related to the performing arts, actually. And that was not, quote unquote, the path that I was meant that I was that I was on, like on paper. That was not what the ideal path would have been for me in college. So yeah, that it was, yeah, it was an interesting journey.
Well, you bring up some very interesting points because my fiance, she's Indian. So
Mhm.
she we have this conversation about all the time because there's the push to get more of the minorities and the BIPOC into the musical theater industry. But
Mhm.
as you mentioned, and she has felt the same thing. She's a teacher, so who went through math and science. Um, the generation, probably her generation and your parents, they don't necessarily see musical theater as a viable option, right? So we as a theater industry try to help, push more people into it. But the problem kind of is the back end with the parents,
Mhm.
right? They're the ones kind of, you may be wanting to do it. So do you think, is there any way of changing that generation, like your parents or my lady friend's parents? Or do you think you will be the generation of, that says to your children, it's okay? Like,
Yeah.
or is it more of a North American thing or a European thing once you come over here that it's more
Mm.
acceptable? I don't have the
Yeah.
answer, and I was curious what your thoughts on that are.
I've given this a lot of thought over the years, especially recently. if my parents hadn't immigrated, and like would I even found musical theater?
Mhm.
You have all these questions, but at the end of the day, what is, and that
Mhm.
happened because for a reason, and I'm so grateful that they, had that courage to step out in faith, and like it was just their entire story of coming, to the US is of course beautiful, like
Mhm.
so many, and challenging, and so interesting, like so many immigrant stories are. Um, and I'm grateful for that every single day. And so you have this attitude of like, well, I want to be grateful for where I came from, but I also, like you said, want to be kind of the generation that, makes some changes and maybe changes some minds. And we have an opportunity now in this society that they didn't have when they were my age, to do things, to create, to make waves, to like we have technology, we have social media, we have so many options and
Mhm.
opportunities to do things that were never even in the stratosphere of possibility even like a decade ago. And
Mhm.
so to that question, like yes, I do think it will be our generation, hopefully, I mean my generation, I hope and pray that kind of says we have this opportunity, let's make the most of it, let's not waste this time that we have, this precious time that we have on this earth, and this particular time to make more opportunities for people from different backgrounds, for people to choose careers that are um, fueled by, of course, talent and skill and hard work, but also passion and also a love for helping people and serving people and impacting people through whatever the field is. And so for me, it is performing arts. And it took a while for me to realize that. I went to medical school actually, and I made the decision to leave, which was very, very hard for me to do, and it still is even hard for me to talk about now, almost a year later, because it was something that I literally never imagined that I would go to medical school. Even when I was pre-med, I was like, I'm not feeling this at all, I don't want this at all, but like I felt like I had to. And then COVID happened, and I was like, okay, well, like I have to choose a career, like it can't be in the arts, because I don't even know where that is now. And so I chose medicine. And so I would say that what really came when it really came to a head for me was I was in um medical school. One of my roommates, she and I are still really close, and she brought up something to your point that was like, you making this decision to pursue a creative field, specifically the performing arts, that you are feeling led to for in a professional sense for one of the first times in your life. You could be that picture for a young Nigerian girl in the future, or a young Black girl in the future, to say, I can, step out of the box and I can do something that's a little bit out of the ordinary in my culture. And I, because I can point to Estelle and say, look, she did it and she landed on her 2 feet. And, whatever that ends up looking like for me, I know that I'm determined. I know that I'm hardworking. And I know that by the grace of God, because I believe He gave me this desire to pursue the arts and to go for it professionally, it's going to work out the way that it's supposed to. And so I hope to be that generational change to say that, look, of course, you need to think about, there is a sense of like practicality of like, okay, how is this logistically going to work for me? But at the same time, don't let, I want to say to the next generation, don't let your limiting beliefs of what has been done in the past hold you back from maybe doing something different in the future. When it comes to your career and when it comes to choosing to use your creative gifts in a professional level, if that's what you want, or in any way. So, yeah.
It's a great answer. Great answer. I think it might be just a genetic thing for parents of any background that they just don't go to the arts because you're not going to make any money. I think Shakespeare's
Yeah.
parents even went, you're going to what? You're going to write? You're not going to make anything of that, right?
Yeah.
I think any culture parents, it's just genetic.
I
Don't go
think,
into
and I understand, because they want to keep their children safe. You want to
Mhm.
keep the people that you love safe from harm.
Yeah.
Being like, and by harm I mean like potential rejection, potential quote unquote failure. Although failure, is relative, I think, but
Yeah.
You want to protect people from what could hurt them emotionally, mentally, financially,
Yeah.
and that's understandable. And I do want to lead with empathy and compassion when it comes to that, and try to see it from that point of view. But at the same time, like you said, there are changes that can be made, and there's always room for improvement and growth. And it takes people stepping out of the ordinary to, for that to, come to fruition. That's the word. Yeah.
So, perfect. So you decided to get in back into the arts. You decided to do that.
Hmm.
What was the impetus for creating the Creatively Performing Arts podcast? What was that moment where you decided I'm going to
Yeah.
do this?
So actually, I started listening to podcasts in college and loved it. And I started listening. A lot of the podcasts that I fell in love with were like entrepreneurship podcasts and like female leaders and women, building businesses. And I was always like, oh, it'd be cool to, have a business. Like if I go into psychology, maybe I'll have have like a mental, health, counseling practice or whatever. My parents are entrepreneurs, so I had that framework in mind. But seeing all these, women who were, sharing their stories, interviewing people was so inspiring to me. And I thought about starting a podcast right before I started, or maybe around the time that I started med school in 2020. I thought about it. But then I was like, maybe one day. I didn't really give too much attention to it. And then in right when I moved, so my medical school that I went to started online because of COVID,
Mhm.
but it's an international med school, so it actually was based in Barbados.
Oh,
So in 2021, I went to Barbados. That was like, um the second to last semester that I was there. I went to Barbados, and that's when I took my mic with me, and I was like, I'm going to start the podcast there, because at that point I had felt the urge to do something creative, or to do something in the performing arts as a career. At that point, I had felt it many times. Um, Literally, once college ended and I graduated December 2019, college ended, and I was like, I really want to start pursuing the performing arts more intentionally. So I started like submitting auditions. I started dancing again. And at this point, though, when I did start the podcast, I was still singing. I was working on my voice by my, just like intentionally working on my voice, growing my voice, and finding ways to perform even while I was in medical school. So I started the podcast with the idea of showing people that you can be creative wherever you are, even in med school. So that was actually when I initially started it, that's what it was about. It was about, staying creative in med school. And I did that throughout the semesters that I was in Barbados. And then I had that moment of, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't continue on down this path when I know that it's not who I want to be. It wasn't aligned. It wasn't an integrity for me to continue to, spend time and money and energy on a path that was not going to be my path. So when I decided to leave, I also decided to kind of change the podcast, revamp it, and really focus on helping people just start performing again. Um, Thinking about how, for me, I started performing again more intentionally after college. And then I kind of started again, even more intentionally, with the idea of being a professional after I left med school. And that journey started at the beginning of this year. And so I was like, you know what? I want to share what I'm going through and also interview other artists, other people in this industry, who are maybe around my age or a little older, or like just a range of people who are artists who are pursuing this, professionally or in whatever way, so that people can see that, if you are like me and you did not choose to, you didn't get a BFA, or you didn't study theater,
yeah.
or voice or whatever in college, and maybe you feel like the sense of, self-doubt or insecurity. I want you to know that you're not alone, first of all, because I understand I went a completely different path, and I talk about this on my show. It's okay if you want to come back to the arts. The arts are always here for you, ready to welcome you with open arms. You can start singing, you can start acting and start dancing again, and it's not too late. And there's no such thing as the right time. Just start today, start small, start wherever you can. And so I love talking about really helping people get started again through that, through the performing arts and living more creatively. And that's where creatively performing arts came from. So yeah.
Nice. I always think it's great when performers have a variety of backgrounds, because if you just intensely study theater or singing or whatever it is, that's great, you're good at it. But someone like yourself who has the background in psychology as well, etc., it brings a different dynamic, and you bring a different thought pattern to when you go on stage or when you're singing. So I love it when other people have a variety of backgrounds, a diversity of knowledge.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about a few of the people that you've talked to. Who have you really
Yeah.
enjoyed?
Oh my goodness. There have been so many good people. Like literally, I gush over everyone that I get to talk to because I'm just so honored that people would spend the time to share their story, and to share advice. So I've been able to interview some of my friends. My friend Estelle Avbuere, she is a musician and a performing and a content creator as well, and like has like a media brand. And she's so young. And so I interviewed her right before she graduated college, and she was like starting to perform even more and write music. And I just loved hearing about her journey because she's also the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, and you know, getting to hear the differences in our stories was so cool. I've also interviewed some people that I found like online just through connecting online, like Diana Giletti, who's like a popular content creator on TikTok, and she loves musical theater as well. She's a performing artist as well, but she's also a content creator, and she talks about becoming a full-time content creator, and also continuing to act. And it was so interesting to hear her story. Maggie Bear, I don't know if you know Actor Aesthetic, the podcast and blog. It's like an online community. Yeah, she's based in New York. She's an actor, and but she's also a content creator. She has a podcast. She has a blog, and it's so interesting to hear like how different artists, of course, their journeys to get to where they are as performers, but then also how they maybe support themselves financially in different ways, how they use their gifts, to not only perform but maybe teach, or to to create content and whatnot. It's just so cool to hear how everyone's journey is different. Everyone is unique, and but we all love performing. We all love storytelling. We all love the arts, and it can shine through in different ways, um like light through like a diamond or like a crystal. The light shines in different ways, but it's still that light of the love for performing and storytelling. So I love that.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about the vocal studio as well.
Hmm. Yeah, so I started voice coaching kind of like casually after college slash at the end of college, because I would, like I said, I would sing throughout college. I would sing at open mic night, or like a if my school was doing something, I would just like sing whenever I could. And I would sing, of course, in my campus ministry and worship team. And I just sang whenever I got the opportunity because I loved it and I wanted to continue growing. And so I would have friends who'd be like, "Oh, you're a voice minor, that's cool." Or they would hear me sing, they'd be like, "Oh, like I would love it. Teach me how to sing like you." And I'm like, "I don't know how to teach anyone how to sing, but we can get together and like just sing together and see what happens."
Yeah.
And I did that with a couple of people, and it was just fun getting to sing with them and say like, "Oh, like let's try it this way,"
Mhm.
and getting to hear different people's voices. And I would just have people who ask me like, "Oh, I would love to, teach me how to sing, teach me how to sing." And I was like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know. I only did that like a couple times with people who I was close to, because if
Mhm.
I wasn't friends with them, I'd be like, "I don't know, I can't really teach you how to sing, so I don't want you to get the wrong impression." But then after college, like I said, I started auditioning virtually, on Backstage, and just like was like, let's just see what happens, because I do again, I felt that pull to perform, even though I was like, no, I know I have to go to med school, but like I still want to perform. So I was kind of torn after college. But I did have a family friend in my church who her daughter loved to sing, and she was like, she would love some voice lessons with you. And that was my first time being paid to like teach a voice lesson. And I was like, okay, let's just see what happens. And it was online. And it was so fun. I was like, this is great. This is so much fun. It was just like a half hour lesson. And then we did that a few times. And it was just fun. And then I kind of stopped doing it because I was like, well, that was fun, but I'm good now. And then after I got back from Barbados, decided to um, pursue a career in the performing arts. I was like, maybe I'll start voice teaching again and really learning about the voice a little bit more and just try it out and see what happens. But I didn't even start the business really officially until um, July. Yes, July. I was like, what month was that? July of this year. And but before that, I was singing again. I started taking voice lessons, I started taking dance classes, I started to act again. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm going to share this love for singing with people. I've been singing my whole life. I've had all these awesome voice teachers. And I don't know that much, but I can do at least beginner level voice coaching and just share what I've learned and what I'm continuing to learn. And so I decided to start my voice studio. I also decided to start a professional certificate in voice at Berkeley online. Um, and so now I'm like studying the voice and also getting to do some online lessons with people to really just share like how can you start singing again? How can you get to know your voice, get to love your voice, sing on a beginner level, just getting to learn 1 to 2 songs, getting to know like how do I warm up my voice? What are some vocal warm-ups that I actually enjoy doing? And that's what I get to do now with my voice lessons.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, congratulations on everything you've done. Going, starting in the theater and the musical and performing, heading over and then coming back. Welcome back.
Yeah.
I have to say. Um,
Thank you.
so how do people get to know you? Do you have a website
Mhm.
that they can check you out at?
Yeah, I have a website called creativelybyestelle.com. That was the original name of my podcast, Creatively by Estelle. Um, but so it's still creativelybyestelle.com. And you can go there. That's where you'll find everything about the voice studio and about the podcast. There's a link there for the podcast. But you can also find the podcast on create on wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, at Creatively Performing Arts. And yeah, I would love for you to come over and listen. We have a good time over there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Estelle, for coming on today. But before we go, I try to ask 3 questions of my guests. Now, there's no right or wrong answers,
Okay.
but our audience is judgy. So we'll let them decide. So question number 1, the easy one. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? No, it could be a composer, a lyricist, director, producer,
Ooh,
actor, stage manager, even could be somebody famous or not famous, like a teacher. Is there anybody in the industry who's had a great influence on you?
wow, that is such a good question. So many people come to
Yeah.
mind. So only one person, right? Okay.
You can have, if you want, you can throw 2 in. That's okay.
Okay, so mm, 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 mm. I don't want to be that person.
Just say it. You know you want to just say it.
Okay, obviously Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, come on, people. Okay,
Yeah.
it's okay if you judge me for that. I will accept the judgment, just because like I said, yes, Wicked brought me like really lit that spark for me. But other than Dreamgirls and yeah, other than really Dreamgirls, I didn't really know shows where there were a lot of people of color in them at that point. Obviously, now I
Mhm.
know there are a lot more, and there are more growing, and we absolutely need more. That's a whole other discussion, but I didn't really see that. And I mean, Hamilton just changed so many people's lives. So was just and continues to be just so impactful. And I can't imagine how many performing artists that are now pursuing the arts and pursuing musical theater that wouldn't have done that if they hadn't seen Hamilton or hadn't seen people of color on stage in that way. And not even just singing traditional musical theater styles, but singing styles that were or songs that are in the style of rap and hip hop, and as well as pop, and has so many different influences, musical influences. And I think having Hamilton come out, or having it, for being introduced to it when I was about to graduate high school, it really just grew that spark for musical theater for me, because I was like, okay, like I love Dreamgirls, and I always knew that. Let me see, like, are there more people of color, on Broadway? This is amazing. This is incredible. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I just, and then, after that, like learning about who Leslie Odom Jr. is, and Renee Elise Goldsberry, and just like being like, oh my goodness, these people are incredible. And they're people of color. Like, I'm seeing someone who looks, of course, like seeing someone who looks like yourself on stage, or, in a musical, or hearing them on a soundtrack in musical theater. It just is a big deal. And so, of course, the entire cast, the original cast, and everyone after on Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda, I love that entire everything having to do with Hamilton. I mean, who doesn't? But there are also people like Jocelyn Bio, who has a couple of plays. They're not musicals actually, but she is Ghanaian. And
Mhm.
so, it was because of I saw Hamilton, I saw, someone like Lin-Manuel, and I was like, okay, there are people of color. And now I can now explore, like, who are these other people? Where are these? There are other people in Broadway who are, people of color, who are children of immigrants. And I'm just like, it's so inspiring. And I think, but for me, kind of Hamilton was kind of like that gateway drug, it was
Yep.
like, it kind of got me into like, oh, now I'm like, I'm seeing all these incredible, talented, hardworking people who are making spaces
Mhm.
for so many more people to be in the theater industry. So yeah.
You can't go wrong with the Lin-Manuel's the
Not me
answer.
gushing over Hamilton for 5 minutes. What?
You're not the first person to
Um,
pick Lin-Manuel. That's okay.
I
Him
know.
and
That's what I
Sondheim are kind
knew.
of the most popular ones that people choose. So
Yeah,
no worries.
understandably, but
Yeah,
I didn't want to be that person, but I had to be. Sorry, sorry, it had to
that's
happen.
okay. You know what? 1 point, and let the people judge. That's their problem, not yours.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. We know you went through for psychology
Mhm.
in post-secondary. My question is, which psychologist do you think would make the most interesting musical?
Oh, interesting question. Very interesting. I mean, I'm just thinking of like the most famous like experiments.
Mhm.
Uh, Hmm. Do I
Like
even
everybody could
know?
say Freud. Everybody knows
Yeah, Freud
Freud
would
and
be like the
Jung.
easiest. That
Yeah,
would be an interesting musical,
yeah.
of course.
The Freud and Jung musical together, that'd be interesting too. Yeah.
Maybe so. Ooh, I keep thinking like Skinner. Skinner. I don't know if you've heard of his experiments with the
BF?
rat.
BF Skinner?
Hmm.
Is it
Hmm.
BF Skinner or something like that? What's his name again?
What is his name again?
Yeah, I know. I know. I've heard of Skinner. I just can't remember now.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't. Let me look it up. Yes, B.F. Skinner. You're
it
right.
is
B.F.
BF. Okay.
Skinner. Yeah. B.F. Skinner maybe because he was a behaviorist, and he was all about like, oh, behavior, um, as opposed to like maybe thinking of like, oh, your mind, change your mind to change your behavior. It was more like change your behavior and then that will change your mind, kind of.
Mm.
So maybe he would be interesting just because I'm thinking of like he had different experiments with rats. I don't even know if I remember anything related to psychology. I only think about Broadway 24/7 now, but
Yeah.
maybe, but that's a good question because now I can be like, oh, I think what you're hitting at is like, real life informed, theater informs life and life informs theater. So like thinking about like who are these people who
Yeah.
could be whose stories could be like expanded upon in theater. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Good question. I didn't
I
have a
might
really good
say
answer,
I
but
might say Pavlov only because you got the bell, so you got the
yeah.
music and dogs. Everybody loves dogs on stage. How can you go
That's a
wrong?
good one. Yeah, dog salivating on stage. I don't know.
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
Come on. Who doesn't want to sing the lyric salivating dogs or whatever it is it's gonna be?
Okay, well, you just have to write it and then
I
let me
know.
know.
Okay, let me write that down. Good answer with Skinner. I like that one.
Okay.
So another
Well,
point for you. All right.
I don't
Question
know
number
what else.
3.
Yeah, okay.
Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? Which is worse?
Oh. I would say cell phones are more disruptive and
Okay.
potentially, yeah, could be more disruptive. And like, but at the same time, how would you get those fake recordings on YouTube? Hmm. I don't know. I'm a little torn. No, I'm kidding. No, cell phones are worse, out of respect to the actors and to all the work that they put in, all the work that the team puts in,
Yep.
you don't want you don't want that to be disrupted by someone just accidentally forgetting to turn off their
Yeah.
ringer. So I think food is a little bit less noisy, could create more problems for like staff cleaning up afterwards. This is my thought process.
Mm.
Okay,
Oh
I'm
no,
letting you in on
I
the
agree
thought
with that one.
process. And yeah, so I don't like the idea of that being a problem with the mess. So, but I would say food over cell phone,
Okay.
just off of, yeah,
I would have
just
also accepted both are terrible.
both too. Yes,
Yeah.
both, ideally both.
I was at a play last night and this
Yeah.
kid was eating chips. Now he's trying to be quiet, but I'm like, they're still chips.
No.
And they're in a bag. Just stop it.
No.
I just want to grab the
Maybe,
chips and throw them.
yeah. I mean,
Like,
most people wouldn't like have a full-on phone conversation though in the theater,
hmm.
but like with chips or like food, like
Yeah.
you have to finish it,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm like,
So
so
it kind of like lasts longer than like, oh, a cell phone and then someone cuts it off
yeah,
quickly.
exactly. It just lingers. Like,
Yeah, it does linger more than a
uh,
cell phone issue, but I would say cell phone, but
okay.
both are bad.
Yeah, terrible. I hate them both. So 3 for 3. Congratulations.
Thank
I've got no
you.
prizes, but you can brag to everybody that you were the
This
winner.
was a
So.
prize. This conversation was a prize, a great way to start the morning. So
Awesome. Estelle, thank you again for coming on and talking to me and reaching out and introducing yourself to myself and the listeners. And good luck with everything that you do in the future.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. Thank you to everyone who's taking the time to listen. Yeah, just keep creating, keep singing, dancing, acting. I'm so grateful that we have the arts in this world to explore. So, yeah, just don't hold yourself back from doing that. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Great way to end the interview. We have just been speaking with Estelle Avbuere here on Musical Theater Radio's Be Our Guest. Tune in next week as we'll speak with another guest or guest about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.